Play World. This is the 5th of a 6-part series on this villain Glauca, the villain from Final Fantasy 15 Kingsglaive. He's the bad guy. He's got this cool biomechanical armor. And if you wish to see the entire series, check out finalcosplaycore.com for more information. There's also pictures and stuff like that of the piece, more information, and it'll help support us and all that good stuff and make us be able to produce more content, because this is very time consuming and raw work and production. Anyway, let's get to the actual project at hand. We are making, at this stage, these shoes, and I'm going to use just some old shoes that have lying around. I keep them around, so I recommend that if you're into cosplaying, you continue cosplaying. It's way cheaper to just use old pairs of shoes for bases or for shoe covers than to buy new shoes every single time. Especially for cases like this, where it doesn't really matter what's underneath of it too much. So we are going to be hot gluing this material down, and initially I hot glued it down to the rubber or the material on the side, but I found out that the hot glue will be much more stable if I glue it down to the fabric, because the hot glue will melt and get into the woven threads of the fabric, and it also bind to the surface of the EVA foam, the craft foam, foamies. And for this, I'm initially just sort of sizing it and creating a shell, because we're going to be building detail on top of it. So we just need a kind of base, and I'm going to wrap it around. Most of the detail is going to be on the heel, where I add a few layers of EVA foam to work with, and then on top of that, what we're going to be doing is coating it in the silicone caulk for texture and streaking it across it. And that's how, if you look at all the pictures of the armor, it has that kind of striation, it has its kind of wood texture. Yeah, the wood texture is done with the silicone caulk and just streaking along in parallel lines with your hand. Well, I wear a glove, of course, but yeah. So we have the base down, and we're going to need a little bit something more for the toe, because the toe typically is going to get beat up, and EVA foam, when it makes contact with things like concrete or harder materials, will generally get beat up and worn off fairly quickly. It doesn't matter how much you sort of plastic it, it wears off. It's a very soft, pliable material. This is where we kick in with the Warbler. Warbler is very durable. It's still quite flexible, so it's comfortably in, thermoformable, and when it's damaged, we can heat it up and repair it exceptionally easily. This is why I'm going to say this every time I do feet or claws. This is why I use it for feet and claws, because it can make a lot of contact with various mediums that you're working with and get beat up constantly, and it'll be great. I almost exclusively use it for the toes, just because I know I'm going to be stepping into hit a step, or I'm going to be grinding against the ground, or I'll be in some foliage or something like that, because it will absolutely take that hit. And worst case scenario is I hit it with a heat gun and patch it up, or add a little bit more material and patch it up, and then hit it with more paint and finish it. Whereas if I were using, say, some harder material or EVA foam, I might have to replace an entire section, and that's the real advantage here that I feel that Warbler has. And one of the few times that I'll use it for a large area. I don't typically do a Warbler over foam because it's incredibly expensive, and it's the materials achieve effect. There are other materials that achieve the effect with more efficiency and more durability. But I'm rambling on here. So with the general half circle, I'm just sort of heating it up and mounting it to the piece. It's adhesive, which is always nice. I'm going to be going in with the silicone caulk as well and smoothing out the spacing. One of the harder parts about adding this piece is that you won't need to hide that transition from one material to the other. It took me 2 or 3 layers of silicone caulk to kind of fully hide that line and transition it across the piece. It's just a straight up line. If I was really kind of planning, I would add some sort of ruffled or filleted edges to it to make it more interesting and blend in with the pattern a bit better, but it's not that difficult of a thing to overcome, just waiting a day or two and adding layers for the piece there. Yeah, and as you can see, it is kind of a soft material, so the toe I had to kind of fill out. It is as simple as heating it up and pressing it out and allowing it to cool off in the proper position. It's a way sensitive, softer material, so you have to be using it at a lower temperature with a heat gun, otherwise it'll get too soft and malleable and lose its integrity, and that's That's that rant. So, for the thigh sections, I kind of want to be really comfortable in this, and these sections are going to be underneath several layers of armor, so they don't necessarily need to be rigid. And they're going to be into my inner thigh and in under my kneecap. And I want those to be as flexible as possible so I can do things like sit. So these are going to be entirely made of EVA craft foam. Once I've patterned out the basic piece that's going to be on my thigh, then we begin adding the layers. This takes quite a few pieces because this is a large section. As you can see, it has a front and back section. I prefer to have the front be the top layer so that you don't see the seam as easily. Now, there are actually details in the armor that allow for this transition. As you can see on the far right, there's those curves. Yeah, those actually are things that exist, and I'm going to be working that straight line into a feathered pattern with this kind of muscle sinew kind of look to it. This is actually part of the design where the feathering works out pretty well for transitioning here, and it does have a few hard angles that I can work with where I have right angled pieces of material. Overall it has, I don't know, 3-4 layers. We have the base layer that everything's mounted on, and then we begin working from the back forward. So the forward piece is the top layer, and it sweeps backwards over the entirety of the leg. And the detail on the back of the leg isn't as important because it's going to be the heart of the scene, but of course it is there because craftsmanship. And the entire piece is hot glued together. Maybe you want to use heavier duty glue and you don't really want to trust hot glue, but the entire surface is just like the rest of the armor, going to be coated in silicone caulk. So even if the hot glue loses its integrity in the heat, and believe me, this thing gets pretty hot, it will be fine because that silicone caulk coating will be there to protect it. And once again, the armor is basically hammered metal. If you go the Krylon hammered metal line of spray paints, there's I believe it's gunmetal. Yeah, that's all there is. Because of the patterning in the spray paint, it doesn't really need anything aside from the texture work. So here we have the calf armor, and it's going to be extended over the front, and we're going to have a flap in the back where EVA foam connects it. The hard thing about a lot of armor designs is they don't really make a plan to get in and out of them, and this is especially true with this armor. I sort of have to overlay different lines in the armor and create seams where they otherwise wouldn't be. And some of the hardest parts of making armor designs in cosplay is figuring out where those natural lines occur and then making a seam or a joint there so you can get in and out of your costume. In this case, we have a panel on the back that they're mounted into. So we have the base rigid PVC to give it its form, and then we have in the joints where we need to be flexible the EVA foam, and then it's all lined in EVA foam so it's nice and comfortable, it's nice and padded on the inside. And then around the edges, around the trim, we're going to take strips of Warbler and we're going to trim all of the edges so that if it does come in contact with something, if it does bump into stuff, it'll be able to take that hit, because again, Warbler is really good at taking con damage. And it's not necessarily needed in this case for the base structure. The PVC is going to be nice and sturdy and hold everything together and hold the shape much better than these other ones, but we'll need the flexibility of the EVA foam, and the durability of Warbler is really nice so that I don't really have to ever repair this piece of armor again. And again, you can see some straps on the inside because the knee is independently jointed. Maybe you want to go in and paint the knee and then attach it later, but the silicone caulking and the layering and getting the straps in under the EVA foam, I decided to put the straps in first and then just kind of paint in around it. It is just spray paint, largely. Okay, with all of the legs sort of walk through, next we're going to go and finish up the arms. I hope you guys check that out. Thanks for watching. Good times to all. If you think this is a lot of videos here on YouTube, you should check out finalcosplaycore.com. There's at least twice as many videos, extended versions, walkthroughs, photographs, just a ton of stuff. I hope you guys check it out. Good times to all. Bruh.